Hi everyone, welcome to the Varanus Vault on the Trap Talk Reptile Network, the coolest reptile network in the world. Tonight I'm joined with John Adragna. This isn't a word I throw around lightly, but a legend in the monitor game. We've got a lot of topics to get through tonight, a lot of stuff on water monitors. John's been doing it a long time, so I'm sure he's got some excellent stories. So with no further ado, a lot of stuff on water monitors. John's got an echo, John. I'm sure he's got some excellent stories. So with no further ado, a lot of stuff on water monitors. John's got an echo, John. I'm sure he's got some excellent stories. A lot of stuff on water monitors. John's got an echo, John. I'm sure he's got some excellent stories.
Hey.
We've got an echo going on, John.
A little bit of an echo.
John's got an echo, John. I'm sure he's got some excellent stories.
Hey.
We've got an echo going on, John.
A little bit of an echo.
John's got an echo, John. I'm sure he's got some. Oh, I don't know what's going on there. John, have you got your telephone on, mate? What's going on there? John, have you got your telephone on, mate?
No. Oh, that's better.
What's going on there? John, have you got your telephone on, mate?
No.
I don't know what's going on.
Oh,
Let me boot you out, John, and then just come back
John,
in.
have you got your
So sorry about that, guys. I don't know what's going on there. Like I said, we've got John Adragna on tonight to talk about a lot to do with water monitors. I'll get to the chat. Hopefully the technical difficulties will sort themselves out. Hi, Mike. Thanks for tuning in, mate. I hope you're doing well. Hi, Paul. How we doing, mate? Let's see if this works.
Hi, Paul.
How we doing, mate? Let's see if this Let me kick myself out, John, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
Let me kick myself out, John, and then we'll go from there.
All right. Okay.
Let me kick myself out, John, and then we'll go from there.
All right. Okay.
Let me kick myself out, John, and then we'll go from there.
All right. Okay.
Let me kick myself out, John, and then we'll go from there.
All right.
Okay. Let me kick myself out, John, and then we'll go from there.
All right.
Okay.
Technical difficulties. All right. Let's see. Now, where's Chris?
How's that? John?
Hey. Sounds much better.
2 seconds. Hello?
Hello.
There we go. I think we sorted it. Sorry about that. Let's start again. Probably something to do with my end with the microphone and stuff. Like I said, it's always works completely fine in the green room. And then like I said, we had an hour-long chat in the green room, and then it all goes to shit on the actual start. So let's start again. We've got John. Okay. Like I said, a legend in the monitor game. Thank you very much for joining me tonight, John. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Thank you. Not from your normal part of the world.
Yeah, I'm here in China.
Very, you're spreading the American word over there, trying to get a deal done.
Yeah. I like China. I've been coming out here 20 years. It's a good time.
Excellent. Yeah, it's not a place many people go to, I suppose, unless they're in sort of your line of work with the manufacturing stuff.
Yeah, footwear. Yeah, it's been a 26-year career in footwear. It's paid the bills, so I continue to do it.
Perfect.
Yeah,
sounds good.
There's just not too many monitors here. They ate them all, so.
Oh yeah, yeah, they do like doing that. Speaking of monitors, we won't start to what got you in reptiles, but can you remember what got you into monitors?
Well, what got me into monitors was a trip to the Staten Island Zoo, and I saw a very, very large water monitor, and I didn't know what it was. I knew it looked like a Komodo dragon at the time. This was like 1989 or something. And, I just wanted to know more about it. So I went to the public library to get information, to figure out what this thing is. I was just fascinated, probably stemming from like a childhood fascination with dinosaurs,
Yeah.
And then I found, what looked to be, my first monitor pet, which was a Nile monitor. And so I bought that for $20, back in the day. And, I was like, oh, Nile monitor, water monitor, same thing. Not really. Didn't know what the difference was, And that's how it kind of started. And that was, a long time ago.
Yeah.
1989.
Like I said, you've been doing it. Wow. Yeah, you've been doing it a long, long time. What were the first sort of...
You know what's crazy? I've been doing this since that day, and there's not been a day or a week that I didn't have a monitor lizard in my life. Like I never took a break. I just collected more, got more, learned how to breed. It all started way back then in 1990 or 89. And I stuck with it. I love it.
Did you ever get into any of the other monitors? Any of the reptiles, or has it just been monitors since that day?
Colubrids. Yeah. Corn snakes, hognose, kind of normal stuff. I still like colubrid snakes.
Yeah. It's difficult to start keeping other stuff once you've got that monitor bug, I found. I've kept a lot of stuff, but yeah, there's nothing really that beats keeping monitors for sure. What were some of the first monitors you kept?
First was that Nile monitor, and then I said, okay, now I have this Nile monitor. I want to get a water monitor, so I ordered a water monitor from an importer in New York City, and the crate arrived, and I opened it up. It was a 5-foot female Thailand locality water monitor. As my first water monitor was this big female, and she must have been somebody's pet because she was very friendly. I had her for a number of years, and that was the first water monitor I got. So I didn't even start with like a baby and raise it up. I got somebody's raised up giant water monitor
in the deep end.
Yeah, and I what I did? I had it in my basement, and I didn't even have a cage big enough. I didn't know shit about these things, so I just had lamps suspended in the basement where it could warm up, and like a kiddie pool. And I changed the water and, feeding it rats, and my friends would come over and we'd just, feed it until it was like, this big round lizard. But we didn't know shit, and we didn't know what we were doing back then.
A bit of a contrast to your Nile monitor and temperament, I'd imagine.
Oh, big difference. This Thailand water monitor was, could be handled, and you could really fall in love with the water monitor when they're friendly like that, Whereas the Nile monitor, I eventually gave to a friend because it was just not much fun for me.
I couldn't afford an Asian water monitor, so I ended up with a Nile monitor. It was actually one of the ornate type. I don't know if they're their own species now or they got sunk back into Niloticus, but the ornate ones are really pretty ones. But yeah, it was a handful for sure. And I used to read books, and there was an old Bennett book or something saying how good and how temperament wise the Asian water monitors were compared to the Nile monitors, but the Asian water monitors were obviously a lot more expensive back then.
But like not all water monitors are friendly, as we all know.
Yes.
So you get lucky a few times and you get this gem of a personality from a water monitor, and then the next one is nothing like that. So they certainly vary in terms of how tolerant they are.
None of mine are nice here at the farm. I've got a coming eye inside that's lovely actually, but all the ones outside are a real handful. Some of the ones are pretty big, but it'd be nice just to have a nice tame one that you can walk about.
I've had tame coming eyes. They do tame down, but a lot of times when I first hatched the babies, I was so excited. I hatched coming eye, and all the babies were attached to my fingers. As soon as they hatched, pretty pretty aggressive right out of the egg. But then I learned, like, if you're calm with them when they're coming out of the egg, I think they get their first impression from you, and they want to, if you play with them when they're right out of the egg and don't scare them, they kind of stay tame.
Yeah,
for the most part.
Thanks, Jin, for that super chat. Thank you as always.
Hi,
like I always say, check out the podcast on the same network, all about monitors, with Mike Stefani on there as well. But yeah, thank you, Jin, as always.
I went to high school with Jin.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, I don't know if I remember her back then, but yeah, we went to the same high school in Manhattan.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Art school, high school of art and design.
That's weird how things like that work. And then you probably never thought back then of you'd be speaking about monitors with someone at school.
Great. She's awesome too. I met her a couple of times.
Yeah, definitely. There we go. So what are you working with now, John? What's your collection look like now? I'm sure it's changed quite a bit over the years.
Yeah, it certainly changed. I have a group of Ackies, red Ackies, top ender Ackies, which are those Northern Territory locality specific pattern.
Yeah, we'll get into them in a bit more detail a bit later on, I think, because you're doing real good work with those Ackies for sure.
I'm keeping and breeding lace. I have bells and normals.
Wow.
I have Flavies, a pair of Flavies that I'm breeding.
Nice.
I have Kimberly Rocks, but they're just young animals right now, so I'm just raising them up. I've bred them in the past. And what else do we have? I got some interesting water monitors.
Yes.
You want to call them that? I got this. Huh?
Go on. I said we'll definitely get into that. Yeah, for sure.
So the one of my favorites is this albino Sumbawa, which was I acquired 3 years ago as a hatchling, and it's just a spectacular looking hatchling, all different colors, more than just like a 2-color albino. This thing had like 4 colors on it. It was beautiful. Wow. And it grew up, and it's a boy, and he doesn't have any of that color anymore. He just pretty much turned white. He's got a very light iris and a black center, so he's like in a T-positive family, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. And he's, as much as he eats, he hasn't exceeded 4 feet.
Oh, so wow.
I like that he's like a small albino water monitor. So I'm going to try to make hats this year. As soon as I get home, actually, I plan on working with them, try to get them locked up.
Downtime to get them sorted. Well, talk about the water monitors. Let's start there then. Because a lot of people won't know what Sumbawa or what a lot of these localities and morphs are. So you want to just go through some localities that obviously you work with or you know about? And then
so I love working with Vivitatus, which is the water monitors found on Java Island and all the way across to Wetar and Flores Island out east. But that subspecies is my favorite water monitor. And because there's so much variation, you got the sulfurs on Java, you have the normal ring pattern types on Java, you got very, very dark animals on Java. And then as you head further east, you got these smaller islands like Lombok and Sumbawa that the water monitors are really beautifully patterned and pretty colorful, and they don't get as large. They're kind of a smaller locality. So I'm really enjoying it.
When you say not so large, what sort of sizes are we talking for those localities like the Sumbawa stuff?
Females are about 3 feet, males are 4. They might have exceptions to the rule, but it seems like, with the amount of food that I'm feeding the Sumbawas, it's, 4 feet is pretty much maximum at this point. They really slow down.
A mainland Javan, which can get, 6-7 foot.
Oh yeah. Sulfurs too. Yeah. They get gigantic. 8 feet, 7 feet. There's the picture of me in that banner. There's a huge one. It's like 65, 70 pounds. It's huge.
Yeah. Oh, so that's interesting. So there's some actual dwarfism going on some of these islands.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it might be food related. It might just be genetic. But it seems like Bali, you have large ones, but then as you head further east, they get smaller and smaller.
Interesting. They're all the same species still, though. They're all Bivitatus, aren't they?
Yeah, at this point, they are. Eventually, if they do a genetic study and figure out what these island types are, they might be different species. It might separate from Vivitatus, because the Sumbawa and the Lombok locality Bivitatis are morphologically different than the Javan giant water monitors. You know, they don't have that super high tail crest.
Right.
The head shape is a little bit different. Certainly the scalation is a little bit different too. Like the scales are a little bit bigger on the Sumbawas comparatively to the Javan types. So it might be a different species.
Yeah, for sure. Sounds like it with morphological differences and obviously the phenological differences as well. That's really interesting. They've probably been separated for some time if they've been on those islands as well.
Yeah.
So what are some of the other localities? So that's your Bivitatis goes quite far east by the sounds of it.
Yeah, it goes pretty far east. And, you know, the islands just north of Sumbawa, you have these little chain of islands that are in the Flores Sea that are undescribed. You know, you have, and each island has their own color pattern water monitor, and we don't know what they are related to. I don't know if they're related to Sulawesi stock or they're related to the Bivitatis stock. I have a feeling they're related to Bivitatis because they don't have the pattern related to like what a Sulawesi water monitor would look like. And they're also, you know, even though they vary in color and stuff, they remind me of a Bivitatis versus a Sulawesi celebensis or Togimanus animal, you know. And it's crazy because the islands are right next to each other and they're totally different looking, like Jampia water monitors and the Salayar Island water monitors. They don't look anything alike. They're totally different. And Karamanjawa? Kalatoa is the other one. Kalatoa, Bona Rate is another one, another water monitor on there. Totally different. They all look different. It's a very interesting little group of islands.
Yeah, you get all the super dwarf ticks come from there. The ones from Slayer are different species actually to the ones you get on Kalatoa. There's Madu there or Honey Island, which is slightly different. They look a little bit different from there. I didn't even know you had salvators there, to be honest.
Yeah, they're tiny islands, but they're on those islands.
Yeah, because they are really small.
Yeah, they're there.
That's really interesting.
And the Salayar, I did see a photo of a Salayar water monitor, and to me it looked like Togianus. It's a very, very dark speckled animal.
Yeah.
So that's and then just south of that you got Jampia, and that's like a yellow animal. You know, it's like totally different. So it doesn't look related like to the Salayar stock at all.
Yeah. So, the animals from Sumbawa, just going back to those being Bivitatis, I think you were saying off show they're not all this light colored.
No, they're not. And you know, the majority of those Nusa Tenggara water monitors are dark colored water monitors. But you know, as we all know, if you're following what Sumbawas are, the popular ones are the bright colored ones, and but you know, I'm pretty sure that's might be isolated to a few key pockets on Sumbawa. You know, most of the ones I'm seeing in the wild through either various websites or birding websites or iNaturalist, they're mostly dark animals, and they resemble the dark animals on Lombok, and they resemble the dark animals on Flores and on Wetar as you head further east. So the majority of these Nusa Tenggara water monitors are pretty dark, but few key pockets on Lombok and Sumbawa, you get these really bright ones. But they're not the exception. You know, it's probably you know, a rare occurrence. Like the majority of these islands are dark water monitors.
Right. So if you bred, do you think it's got to the point where they're obviously not a morph at this point, but if you bred them, you'd get some darker ones out?
It's very possible. You know,
do they breed quite true? If you breed two light colored ones together, do you tend to get light ones out? Do you know?
Well, with Ackies, I do. I know that. I know I could breed two good-looking Ackies and make better-looking babies. You know. Yeah.
So they're almost making without it being a proper morph. They've almost got to the sort of that point where you're going to get those ones back, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think, and you know, the guys here in the States that have hatched Sumbawas that bred good-looking animals together, they popped out good-looking babies.
Yeah,
you know, bright-colored babies. They didn't hatch out anything that was like, you know, drab or, you know, like brown or anyway. You know, they were like yellow animals with big shoulder bands and stuff.
Yeah, I bet nobody's working with the dark ones, are they?
I don't know. I don't. They just aren't exported here. You know, I just see the more high end ones. I don't see the darker ones.
In 10 years, they'll be the ones that everyone wants, like everything else. Everyone will be bored of the white ones, and then we want the black ones.
Of course, of course. I mean, and not when I say dark form, I don't mean like a black dragon. It's like a a darker animal with a reduced dorsal pattern and a cream or yellow colored ventral side, not like a black dragon. Just a darker locality of water monitor, and it seems to be like right across from. Right after you leave Java Island and heading east, it seems to be a lot of dark animals. Even on Sumba Island.
Yeah.
They're big and they're dark there too. I didn't see
Interesting.
anything there that's bright colored.
Expensive to visit there. I was looking at going over there looking for some dwarf monitors. So I thought they might have hopped along there, but it's like a really luxury island to stay there now. So if anyone's got a lot of money and wants to spend, I think it was $5,000 for one night. They got some pretty suave hotels on Sumba.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who would have known?
No, I was expecting like the rest of Indonesia. I'll just pop it because it's so close to where I am. Yeah, I'll just fly there and see if there's any Audatria on there. Because it's sort of on that line going down to Timor.
Yeah,
like, surely there'll be something on there. And I started looking at hotels, and it's like a ring of luxury hotels. I'm sure you can get cheap accommodation there, but I was shocked. I was like, oh wow, this is pretty exclusive.
I didn't know it was a destination.
It seems to be. Who would have thought? I mean, pretty much. I don't think anyone would have heard of it unless they're.
It's a very obscure. To me, I always thought it was like this offshoot island south of the rest of the islands over there. South of
check it out. Yes, it's pretty. It's the happening place if you got loads of money. So God knows what goes on that island. Probably trying to keep people away.
Yeah, it always seems like the further east you went into Indonesia, where you wind up in the Moluccas, it's like really the end of the world. It's there's what's after that besides New Guinea, but there's really it's so far out of reach from everything else. Everything it's like hard. Western,
Yeah,
it's like all these little string of islands. Like it's.
Yeah, really, there's so many. Indonesia's got so many little islands. You just get a map out, as you sound like you do, John, and just look, and you're like, oh, it's got to be something cool on there. So, then endless supply of new stuff, I would imagine, and places for me to visit, which is always good.
That's kind of how I found that there's Timor monitors on those little islands out there off of Timor.
Not
Timor Island. I'm talking about the ones like
in between Wetar and Lesti.
Yeah, like on Babar and Damar and those little islands. There's got to be
really interesting. Really interesting part of the world because you've got Tanimbar there, which is in between. Barbar's in between Lesti and what was the other one? So you got Tanimbar, Barbar, and then Timor Leste. So it's in between. So there's got to be something cool there. Yeah, there's lots of interesting endemic stuff from Tanimbar. But you could spend your life visiting all these little islands.
Yeah, and that would be like a range extension for Timorensis. I don't know if it's truly a Timor monitor, but those little islands could have their own species. Just like off the west coast of Timor, you got Offenburgi, and there's other little islands with interesting little Timor-looking monitors that are probably their own species.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, considering how close Rotti is to Timor itself, and like I said, you got a string. That's why I started looking at Sumba. I was like, it's like literally Savu, and then Sumba's the next one. I was like, that's quite a big island as well.
Yeah,
these little ones. I wonder if they've managed to make it up there. But I was outpriced.
Oh yeah, outpriced. Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, definitely.
That would be really cool. One big island with its own species. Like, that'd be pretty neat. I mean, why not? I mean, you got all those other islands have those little dwarf monitors.
Yeah, and they're not too far apart. But
yeah,
it'd be Varanus Luxury or something. Varanus Luxio.
Yeah. What was that one? Samau Island.
Samau Island, just off Kupang. Yeah, we've got some Timors on there that are pretty interesting, and then Savu as well has got his own one, which is the one probably going to be a new species. That one as well. And like I said, they're all just in a line. going up to Sumba. So what's to say they wouldn't make it up to Sumba as well?
We're giving your viewers a geography lesson over here.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, listen, if you really want to know your water monitors, you better get familiar with your islands.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, especially
geography is very, very important, you know, which is kind of like why I'm like not really into like the crossing of these different subspecies. You know, I don't think they make a better looking animal when you cross them.
Sure.
But, you know, I understand the morphs. You can, you know, you can mix like T negative, T positive with black dragon and wind up with this, you know, this crazy new combination of visual black dragon albino. You know, I get it. That's like a marketable thing. But generally speaking, you know, like I'm guilty of it. I did cross Coming Eye and Samarensis, but they're very closely related. They're 3% difference between, you know, that species from the other. So they're very, very, very closely related. They just dorsally, the pattern is similar. And I did cross them, but it didn't make a better looking lizard, you know, like Coming Eye by itself is gorgeous. Samarensis by itself is gorgeous. Why mix them together? You know, I did it. I only hatched 4 animals, but you know, I stopped it at that point. I was like, you know, this doesn't make sense. You know, you just keep Coming Eye own thing.
Is there any distinguishable difference that you could tell between the two? If you showed me a Samarensis and Coming Eye,
definitely. Coming Eye tends to have these, you know, 6 or 7 cross bands across the back with the spinal stripe, whereas Samarensis has maybe 5 dorsal crossbars and no spinal stripe. There's no stripe going down their back. Coming Eye has that. Almost all the Coming Eye you'll find have this stripe down the spine. Also, Coming Eye have a more yellow head. Samarensis has a darker head. That's another thing. And then they might be, Samars may be a little bit smaller, although I did have a large male Samar that was like, you know, rivaled any big male Coming Eye.
Yeah.
But
as babies, are they similar? I've got one here that's meant to be a Coming Eye, and it's got a lot of ocelli on the back. But I've never raised Coming Eye up from you know, juveniles, so I was worried that was a Samar. Is there any way of telling when they're younger, or you need to get an adult animal really?
Well, you got to raise it up a little bit longer to see what your Coming Eye is going to look like. But you probably have Coming Eye. The Samars, you know, they kind of look like they have like a white collar across their shoulder, whereas Coming Eye will have that more yellow across the back. Samars have more white, and then black stripe, and then a yellow stripe, and then a white stripe. They're really strange. Like they got these crossbars in their white, yellow, black, all the way down the back. And the head is dark.
Okay, I'll keep a lookout. But even Coming Eye can have the ocelli. It just breaks up into a band as they get older, does it?
Yes.
Yeah. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I was just shocked to see this one's quite big. Well, I say quite big. It's probably 2 foot, and it's still got the ocelli. I was like, is it one of these? I hadn't really looked into the Samarensis much. I'd seen them, and I was like, I've got to be careful here just to make sure they're not crossed. Like I said, they seem pretty unique.
And those Coming Eye, they change a lot. Even as they like reaching 2 to 3 years old, their pattern is starting to like blend together. Like the ocelli just form like these cloudy bands or like these bright yellow bands. You know, maybe they'll get to like black speckling inside there too. So they change a lot. Like you can get like this, you know, a baby Coming Eye, you buy a bright yellow head, bright yellow cross bands, and then they get like I said, like the spots start to merge together to form bands, and maybe those bands get a little bit of like a black speckle in it. They get really interesting. You never really know what you're going to wind up until they're like really a little bit older, like 4 years old, and then they kind of like they're settled. That's it. You know, that's what your pattern is going to be. But they change so much. Like the babies are really dark, and then within months they're bright. So they change a ton.
Yeah, they're really cool. Yeah, really nice.
There's really not much more lizard that's more conspicuous in your cage than a Coming Eye. You know, it's like
especially a friendly one.
Naturally, like this bright yellow thing. You know, like, does not blend into its environment at all. You would imagine, you know.
No, it must be amazing to see one in the wild. Just, I mean, there's got to be a reason they're that color, but it doesn't seem. I remember seeing pictures of them from I think Duncan McRae had some of the first ones back in the late 90s, early 2000s, possibly. I was like, Jesus, it's like an actual golden monitor. It's just crazy.
And you know, it's not even just can't even just say it's like just coming eye on the Philippines that is like that, because you got Nucallis with this white head in some locations, you know. You got a white head and these white crossbars and like this black mask with the eye stripe, and it's just beautiful, you know. And again, it's like, how does this animal blend into its environment? Somehow it does.
So have you worked with any Nucallis, John?
Yeah, we used to keep them. Me and my partner Alex. He bred them and hatched them once or twice, but we don't keep them anymore. We gave up the project and we got into something else, and you know, kind of kick ourselves about it.
Yeah,
you know, we wish we held on to it, but you know, sometimes we forget, like, you know, what we're working with and make mistakes, you know.
Yeah, get a bit complacent. I think someone else will carry the project on, which sometimes doesn't happen, unfortunately. I'd love to work with them. Obviously, them being from the Philippines, we can't export them. We'd have to import them from somewhere legally. But yeah, I see some of the ones that are over here, and they're just incredible. Like real yellow, some of them with the white heads and the black.
Yeah,
amazing. Going back to the Indonesian localities, John. What are some of the other ones? There's Celebensis. That seems to be
you got
popular.
Celebensis on Sulawesi, and Togianus is there too. So you got Celebensis in the north, over near Gorontalo and you know, Palu, those little towns, the northern arm of Sulawesi, and then Togianus seems to be like dead smack in the middle of the island and south. Like they just take up the rest of the island. And Sulawesi is a big island, so you got these, you know, big ocelli Celebensis in the north, and then the blacker speckled ones in the south.
Yeah. And what sort of size are those reaching?
They're smaller. You know, I've seen some big ones like over 5 feet, but generally it's a 3 to 4 foot lizard.
Wow.
But there are exceptions. You know, I had a friend with a 5.5 foot male Togianus. You know, so they can, you know, if you feed them and, you know, the genetics just have it, they just get big.
So on the locality stuff, is there any other localities that people might not know about from the Indonesian side?
Well, you got Macromaculatus, which is the black dragon, and the Sumatran locality. That's like you know, those are giant water monitors. That's, you know, they're also very, very popular still to this day. You know, if you're buying a normal water monitor, chances are you're going to wind up with a Sumatran out of a pet shop, and it's going to be this, you know, huge, tend to be pretty well behaved too as they get bigger. So you get this big friendly animal. Black dragon is a Macromaculatus as well. But there's so many. That range is gigantic, and you know, there's a lot of there's a lot of macro population. There's, well, the entire Kalimantan island is full of these, and they're all, you know, highly variable. You know, from like a black animal to a speckled animal to a ringed animal, to various shades of cream or yellow. But yeah, that's the big subspecies of the water monitor that we can legally acquire as a pet. You know, it's not the biggest water monitor, but it's you know, the biggest we can get. And they're one of the most popular, and they have a really good attitude for the most part.
Interesting.
So they tend to be popular animals, and Bivitatus too, like out of Java. You know, the big Javan water monitors with the shoulder bands, and you know. And you know, it's funny, like the macro and the Bivitatus, if you put them side by side, they have different head shapes. They're like, you know, the macro has this long skull, and the Bivitatus has like this more blunted nose with a high nasal bridge, and like maybe like a more bulbous temple region. They don't look really alike at all next to each other.
Right.
But they both get big, but the macros are even bigger than the Javans, and they both get really big.
Don't know why that be. They're taking up a different habitat somewhere, or no idea.
I don't know. It's just genetic.
Yeah.
You know?
They lots of interesting things like that. Wondering if they were more in the jungle than some of the Javan ones. Like I said, the Javan ones got them big bulky heads a lot of the time.
Bigger, more bulky head, more like a high nasal bridge, and the macros are like this long dinosaur face. You know, more smooth. You know, from the side profile, they're more smooth looking.
Definitely. I'm trying to think of any others. There's Ziegleri.
So that stuff, you know, Ziegleri, occasionally they come in as OB Island water monitors, you know, and they're not expensive animals, but they probably should be, because, you know, that's the furthest east ranging water monitor. It goes all the way out into the Moluccas, and it's on Obi Island, but it's also on other islands that they don't collect from, but they collect like Molinas on like Taliabu and Sanana, Mangole. So there's a very similar looking water monitor on those islands, and they're probably all related to Celebensis and Togianus off of Sulawesi. Just like they probably just left the islands and rafted to the Taliabu and then off to Obi Island. That's they just created populations and became their own species eventually.
I was getting confused with the Togianus when I first saw the little Ziegler eye. So it looks a bit odd.
Yeah,
very different. Yeah, so that's interesting.
Cool pattern. I have a friend in Florida that raised one up. She got it from me as a baby, and it got like close to 5.5 feet. It's a pretty big animal, which was surprising because I thought maybe it would be topping out at like 4 feet, but it got big. Turned out to be a big lizard.
Excellent. And then do you want to just quickly run through just the Philippine stuff that pops up in the hobby? There's a lot of stuff in the Philippines that doesn't, but the coming eye obviously from there.
Yeah, coming eye seem to be pretty well established in the States now. Maybe Nucalus will be, down the line, but they need to be bred more. There are some captive bred ones in the States now, so people are working with them. And there's really not much left of Marmoratus in the United States, so I don't know if we'll ever see that stuff again.
Right.
But Marmoratus is not a very attractive looking lizard. You got coming eye, which is bright yellow. Nucalus got that white head, and the black body is pretty neat. And you got these Samar water monitors, Samarensis, that resemble coming eyes to some degree. So those are the three that are right now in the States, and maybe they'll rival the amount of like what coming eye has become. Maybe eventually Nucalus, you see numbers like that, and that would be great because then more people can get them and work with them, and maybe line breed them and make them better looking. Keep making the head wider, make the neck wider. Keep pairing good looking animals together. Same with the Samarensis. Samarensis is really cool because they got this amazing cross bands, like I mentioned earlier. Pretty neat.
They all,
sorry,
bro. Are they all similar size? The Nucalus and the coming eye, or is one of them bigger? Is the Samarensis any smaller?
I think Nucalus is the smallest of the Philippine species.
Okay.
Certain islands in the Philippines, they don't get larger than 3 feet, and that's like Masbate and not Masbate, Ticao Island, and they seem to be very dark with big neck scales. So the neck scales are larger on those islands, and the animal's body's size is much smaller. And they're a black lizard,
right?
Whereas like the Panay and the Negros Islands, they're more brightly colored and they're somewhat larger, up to like 4 to 5 feet. They're still small in coming eye,
Yeah.
But those are the only 3 subspecies. There are only 3 Philippine species that we have in the United States that are people working with. There's no Marmoratus. Right. There's other species over there like Banganorum and Dalubasa. Those are recently described. They are not in the States. They are they look somewhat like Nucalus, and maybe look like a Nucalus bred to a Samar. That's what they look like. They're just like a blend. Oh, wow. They look totally different than Nucalus by itself, or Samarensis by itself. So they're just north of those populations of water monitors.
Yeah.
But they're their own thing. They're isolated where they are, and they're their own species.
Yeah, we're not likely to see them anytime soon.
No.
Over your neck of the woods, at least.
Yeah.
They might turn up in my neck of the woods, but your neck of the woods, maybe not.
If somebody could do a legal import, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think Philippines is just banned, I think, for all exports. I don't know if they ever open up and close. I'm not sure on the Philippines.
No.
And they got some really cool stuff. The high amount of endemic monitors from there.
There was a legal export in 2012, and it was coming eye, Nucalus, and Marmoratus. And I bought the coming eye from there, and I bought the Nucalus. And the Marmoratus went to a friend of mine. I remember that, but they were males, so the Marmoratus couldn't be bred here. But that was a legal import, so that was good. That was good that somebody in the Philippines was able to get them legally exported to the States. Yeah. So the Nucalus, I think one of the Nucalus that came in became one of the breeders that we managed to breed and hatch.
Excellent.
And then the coming eyes that we got wound up becoming breeders as well.
Yeah.
But it was a pretty standard looking coming eye, you know, wasn't like this, you know, bright white pattern type like that people are breeding now. It was more like, you know, more black than yellow.
Okay.
Wild caught animal, not very friendly, I remember.
That's my life these days, mate. They're all like that when you keep them outside, pretty much. Crossed over to the morphs, then, John. I don't know if you know, where did some of these morphs? If you want to go through the morphs, is there like certain localities where these morphs arose, like albino and Javan stock, or do you know anything about that?
Well, if you look at some of these albinos, you could tell they're either, you know, some have Javan bloodlines and some probably are macromaculatus because they don't have like a shoulder band or they don't have the neck stripe. So it's probably this, you know, it was probably like an albino Sumatran, you know, like one of the first albinos. But now you have T positive and T negative Javan water monitors. You know, the ice dragon, this seems to be a Bivitatus locality albino. And then you have these new albino forms that pop up. You know, you have like this one they call light coral, which is on Java Island, and it's kind of like it's like a ruby-eyed albino. It's not a pink eye albino, and it's not a T. It doesn't really look. You can't really call it a T positive because it's so light colored, but it has a darker eye than a T negative water monitor. So they call it light coral.
Okay, I thought the coral they bred two together. See this? How little I know. Aren't they getting 3 different types out of one breeding now? Is that the same coral or is that different?
This is the light coral is a different locality albino.
Right. Okay.
And nobody really knows what it is. Like it's probably not a lizard that came out of a T positive and T negative pairing in the wild. It's probably just something that popped up. It's a ruby eye albino.
Right.
And then there's other albinos on Java Island that seem to popped up in the last few years, like this type that I have at my house. That's Karawang locality. They call it Karawang. I don't know if it's truly that or not, but it's a white skinned albino with a dark eye. So I can't really call it a T positive because T positive for what it really is a caramel albino. Yeah. And this is not a caramel colored animal. This is a white skinned and light, like a light gray color animal. It's more like a snow, you know, we call it platinum, you know, it's different. It has a lavender colored tongue. It's not a pink tongue albino. It has a dark pupil, but it has a light silver color eye or like a silverish reddish color iris. So I don't know what it is. I have a pair. I'm going to try to get things going out of them this year. But I don't know what it is. It's new. You know, Java is funny. Like there's a whole lot of stuff going on Java. You know, it's not just you know, your normal water monitors there. You know, the sulfurs come out of there, and that's a gene that's interesting as well. It's probably, you know, always has a place in my heart. It's my favorite water monitor, MORPH. Probably because it was the first one I owned in like 1993, and I had it for 17 years. And it's a funny gene, you know. It's a recessive gene, but it's a color and a pattern gene combination. It's not an albino either. Yeah, you know, but it does something to the pattern. This gene, this sulfur gene, is, you know, it creates like a lizard that's unlike animals that are found similar in the same area, you know, that have like a long neck stripe and rings across the back. The sulfur has like, you know, wide cross bands across the neck and down the back, and it's all merged together. There's no like hollowed out ocelli with a dot in the middle. It's like, you know, straight bands or like big round spots down the back that eventually merge into a band. And, you know, the belly on the sulfur is banded across, which is unusual for anything in Indonesia. Most water monitors in Indonesia, the bands do not connect, but on the sulfurs they do. So the sulfur is a really bizarre lizard. It's a very strange morph, and it's only found in like one little section of central Java.
Yeah, a pattern and a color morph tied into one almost.
Yeah, it's two things.
They get big as well.
They get really big.
Yeah.
Well, look at that banner picture, man. That thing's not Photoshopped. That's huge. I'm not a big guy, so that lizard looks even bigger than when I'm playing with it. You know.
Put that out quickly. Yeah, it's a big lizard.
Yeah, that's me. I'm like, I don't know. I'm like 2 feet tall. That lizard's like 8 feet long.
Yeah, yeah. The one we've got one here that must be pushing 7.5, 8 foot. Nasty as well, but beautiful. Yeah, they're pretty incredible. So how do you? It seems like it's murky waters, which is what I was trying to get to the bottom. And one of the reasons I invited you on the podcast is I'm like a bit like you were saying earlier. I don't really want to start crossing. I want to work with these morphs, but then you don't really want to get into the crossing thing. Is there a way you think, or if you do the morphs, you're going to cross the lizards? There's no way around it, or how can you do the best? The best.
Most of the morphs that you find in the hobby are Javan or Sumatran. Java and Sumatran water monitors are very closely related. There's very little genetic difference between them.
Right.
They're not that different, despite like the head shape differences. They're really not genetically very different from each other. They're probably the closest related of the subspecies of Salvatore. Being that they're both very large, they're on islands right next to each other. The Javan animals, originally came from Sumatra and just came down and across the island and just populated, and they just kept going east. So they became their own thing. But you could, you're not really making a crazy, you're not doing anything crazy by crossbreeding those two subspecies together. I mean, people are doing the black dragon, which is a macro, and they're breeding that into albinos from Java.
Yeah.
It is what it is. If you're trying to make a combination that's new.
So where do you stand on that? You think if it's a morph project, just let rip and do it, but then we should be keeping the locality stuff pure?
The locality pretty stuff like Sumbawa, you're probably better off just keeping Sumbawa with Sumbawa or Celebensis with Celebensis, because Celebensis is an amazing looking water monitor, and I can't imagine like putting another water monitor to it, make something better. I just don't think so. I think if you line bred Celebensis with better looking Celebensis and just make something just spectacular, because they got these big ocelli and just, I don't know, they got these really broad tail bands. They're really cool.
Yeah, and very yellow, some of the ones I've seen, like yellow with these big ocelli on them. I had seen someone was crossing them, and I can't remember who it was now, into the albino stuff to try and get a smaller monitor. But from what you're saying, the Sumbawas and stuff like that, which would be more closely related than Celebensis, might be the way to go to get a smaller albino water monitor.
There are albino there are albino Sulawesi water monitors out there. I've seen them.
Right.
There's a guy in Indonesia. He messages me on Instagram once in a while. He shows me updated pictures. The animal is amazing. It's like an all white colored Togianus. You don't even see the speckles anymore. It's just white. Yeah. Very, very beautiful. So eventually, maybe if he bred that to, regular Togianus or Celebensis, you'd have like this albino Celebensis or albino Togianus. Yeah. For the market, that could be exported and it's a marketable animal. It's a totally different albino than the Javan type. Yeah. The pattern is different.
Gets into murky waters. I've seen some pretty, what I'd call horrendous crosses over here with Coming Eye, cross with the Javan stuff.
I'm not into that. I'm not the line there. But I'm into. Listen, I'm to each his own, and you want to do that, fine. But I don't think you make a better looking lizard. Yeah. You got to see something cross that's really amazing.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. That makes me feel a little bit better about acquiring some animals here, because I was trying to keep it morph and locality at the same time, and it sounds like that might be quite difficult to do. Yeah. So maybe we just do some morph projects here and not get anything too Frankenstein and crazy, and then keep the pure localities pure. I think that's the problem when if it gets too far into the morphs, which can happen. The reason I'm sort of getting interested in them is because we're getting requested a lot to breed the morphs over here, and people just want to buy them off us. So I was like, we need to do them, but I'm always conflicted with the locality stuff, which is my passion as well. Over here. But yeah, maybe keeping the two different projects, and as long as you're breeding the locality stuff as well, that might weigh it out in my moralities.
Yeah, I agree. Keep your morph projects to your morph projects, and your locality specific stuff separate. That's and just line breed that to be better looking.
Yeah, there's so much work. We'll get into it with your Iraqis maybe a bit later, but with the line breeding and stuff. I just wanted to touch back on the platinums. Did you know much more about the platinums? I can't remember if you said off air.
No, they're just Javan. They're Javan locality water monitors, so it's bivitatus. They don't seem to be getting as big as other bivitatus that I've raised up from Java. Like they have a male that's 5 feet and he's 4 years old, and that's pretty unusual because usually sulfurs by 4 or 5 years old are gigantic. So this animal's, pretty petite in comparison. But I don't know. I'm going to try. I got a pair, so I'm going to try to get them going.
Do you want to just explain what they look like? I wish I had a picture to show people, because
it's a beautiful morph. It's a white skinned,
exactly
white skinned albino of some type. Like I said, I wouldn't call it a T positive, and it's definitely not a T negative. But I can't call it T positive because it's not a caramel albino. It's its own thing. It's a white skin and like this light gray dorsal pattern on the back. But the head and the neck are white. The nails are white. The tongue is lavender. It's really pretty.
Yeah.
The only problem I have is babies are beautiful. They're purple and they're purple.
But they do white out. They don't keep that pattern. Now that's a shame, because the ones I've seen have all been baby ones. So I was like, if I can get an adult one that looks like that, then we're in business.
They turned white, and it's hard to keep them clean. It's like a white car. It's like a white car. You gotta clean it a lot.
Yeah, it looks smart when you washed it.
Yeah, they're pretty, but it's easy to get them. They wind up pea stained, as I said earlier.
Yeah.
They lay in dirty water, and if you get it, they're gonna stain like that until they shed.
Interesting how much they can change.
I'm constantly brushing mine, like I got this scrub brush. So I was like, I gotta make it look good, get the dead skin off and stuff.
Definitely. Is there any localities or morphs that you want, or they're on your wish list or anything like that?
No, I have exactly what I want.
Yeah. Good.
I got these platinums I want to work with, and I got the albino Sambawa to make hets with the female Sambawa and keep them albino and keep them small.
Nice.
So I have a female. She's like 3 feet. I hardly ever see her, but my wife said she's been eating in front of her lately. So I'm gonna make my wife just feed her for the rest of the spring, and let's see what happens. Seems to like my wife. Doesn't like me at all.
Sounds like a good wife.
All these monitors seem to like my wife, and they can't stand me. So I'm like, okay, you feed them. You change the water. Fine.
That sounds like a very, very good wife. Very understanding wife.
Yeah. Since I've been over here, she dug up a clutch of lace eggs. She caught a loose lizard. She does it all.
Perfect. I need one of them. Get me. Where can I find one of them?
Get them on. I'll see if I can find one for you. I might be able to find one here in China and send it down to you.
Yeah. So do you notice any difference in temperament between the localities or the morphs?
Not really. I mean, everything has an ability to become tractable, handleable. Some animals don't want to be, some animals come out of the egg and they're fine, and some don't want to be bothered, variations in personality, and it doesn't matter if it's coming eye, because I've seen puppy tame coming eye, and, I've seen angry sulfurs. So not everything, is out of the egg friendly.
Strict. And is there any problems with any of the morphs like we see in a lot of the royal pythons and stuff like that? Is there any deleterious genes? Have you seen any problems with them blind or affecting with UV or anything like that with the albinos?
I don't keep any T negatives, so I don't know what they're like. I don't keep them. And the only albinos I have at the moment are these dark iris, these dark pupil types. They have no eye problems, and they don't seem to have any health issues. They're, they seem to be acting normal. They do water monitor things,
Yeah, definitely.
They just
And
want to
then
eat crap in their water as soon as I clean it.
it seems like a good project to try and get them smaller then as well. That's a good thing to line breed them, so you'll be able to actually get smaller, because I think, you know, it puts a lot off having these giant, so they are really big.
That's why that albino Sulawesi animal that's out there in Indonesia is worth breeding. That's a really nice project, you know, if you could get that going. But it's like I said, it's very rare. You know, I think there's only 2 in existence that I've known of. You know, but that animal would be a nice, colorful, small albino.
That's the albino celebensis, was it?
Yes, celebensis. Yeah, it might be Togianus actually, because it doesn't have any dorsal pattern. It just seems to be like little speckles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't tell Michael. He'll want that. Oh, Uncle Mike. That's another one to add in his project. He's doing really well with the with just the normal ones. I don't know if he'd want to make up with any dirty morph blood.
Yeah, no, he's amazing. He's an amazing breeder.
Yeah, for sure.
These guys are good. These guys, you know, these monitor guys over here are good. They're good guys. They're good friends of mine. You know, Mike, Nick,
and Unlimited Exotics. Thanks for tuning in, mate. He was on the show last week. Says you need to write a book on locality. So our geography lessons. Look, people are interested, mate.
I might have to do that.
The hardcore.
If anybody ever has a question, you know what I get? I get a lot of people that send me pictures of their water monitor. Where is this from? And I'll tell them, you know, this is what it looks like. You know, I'm pretty good at that. You know, because I had done a lot of wet room collection museum work back in the 90s, looking at preserved water monitors out of the Smithsonian and Museum of Natural History and the universities in California that were able to get into their wet room collection back in the day. Now it's like almost impossible to get into these places, but I do have like a photo album with photos of these localities. And then any place like that I couldn't go to, like in Europe or Australia, I told them to, you know, I would mail them a little disposable camera. I'm like, can you take pictures of these water monitors, this catalog number, and send them to me? And here's the postage. And, you know, my name is John. I'm just a hobbyist, you know. And I did this, you know, in the mid 90s. And they would send pictures back, you know, or they'd send the camera back and I'd get it developed. And so
that's incredible
to see what, you know, what was going on. To be honest, there wasn't a whole lot going on. It's a lot of, you know, a lot of these baby water monitors look the same. You know, so it wasn't very telling, you know, until Google came out, you know, the internet came out, and then you could see, like, you know, what people were posting online on birding forums. You know, that was a big one, because the birders are out there in the jungle, and they're seeing water monitors and they're taking pictures. So you get locality specific.
They're a lot better than the herpers. The stuff the birders see compared to people looking for reptiles is just always amazing. You know, typical twitcher, as they get called. Seeing that, so that's typical. Was there any reason behind doing that, John, or just being a massive reptile?
Well, it all came about when I bought my first sulfur water monitor, which was labeled as a xanthic water monitor, and that was in 1993. And it was $600, and it was the most expensive thing I ever bought at the time. And I had to save a lot of, you know, a lot of money to get it at the time. It was $600 back in '93. Was pretty much, you know, a good chunk of money especially for a water monitor. And, you know, I had some friends make fun of me for it, but I was like, fuck you, I want the thing. So it turned out I originally bought it, and I thought it might be Coming Eye, but then, you know, I got to find some photos of Coming Eye in like a Reptiles magazine, and, you know, that stripe behind the eye on a Coming Eye is so prominent, and the sulfurs don't have an eye stripe. There's no eye stripe on a sulfur. So I was like, no, it can't be Coming Eye. So then trying to find what the locality was for it, you know, took me down this route of looking online for photos or looking in books and stuff. It wasn't even until recently. It wasn't even until like the 2010s that you know, I figured out where the sulfurs were from. So it took a long time. And I had a lot of people telling, you know, I even had like photocopies of letters between guys who claimed to have known where they're from, and they were really wrong, you know, and these were pretty well-known guys. and you know, somebody was like, oh, it's a Fly River, Papua New Guinea locality of water monitor, or no, it came from Banten locality, Java, West Java. It turned out to be neither of those, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm
Yeah,
glad
I
I
don't
now
think
know what it is.
people realize what it was like in the 90s, pre-internet. I mean, that's incredible going to those lengths. That's is very telling, and you definitely need to write that book, especially with all that information as well. That'd be incredible.
Yeah, maybe one day if I could find the time. That's the problem, finding the time.
Yeah,
I don't sit still, and it's hard for me to. I can't believe I'm as successful as I am, and I'm not even that successful because I'm never fucking home. You know, I've been in China for the last fucking 5 weeks.
Oh wow.
I'm exhausted. I'm jet lagged, and I'm basically, you know, managing my wife to breed my lizards while I'm over here. You know, she's doing a good job of it, but a lot of times I'm not home for like months at a time. So, but I go home next week and you know, get these platinums going. Maybe, you know, hopefully,
I'm cracking.
Hopefully they get along. They didn't get along last time. Well, maybe we'll see.
Yeah, that can be a problem with the with all the monitors. Yeah, you can have all the best will in the world, think the female's ready, and then not put it together. Have you done anything with ultrasound, John? I found that pretty useful over inspection.
No, maybe I should. I haven't done that yet. Yeah, I haven't done that. I find lace monitors to be the easiest things I've ever kept. Lace are by far the easiest big lizard I've ever kept. There's very little water changing, you know. They're not messy lizards. They kind of like perch and they look beautiful, you know.
Excellent. Were you you must have been one of the first people to get those in, the lace monitors, weren't you, John?
Yeah, I imported it, the bells, a couple of bells in 2012, and I sold them to a breeder in Texas, and he ran with it. So yeah, that's why we have so many bells in the States now. It all started with those guys, you know.
Pretty productive. I mean, I can't believe they even made it into the hobby. I remember drawing over pictures of one that were hatching in Australia, and just
you know, they're so common. Like if you look online, you see them for sale, and most people are like, oh, you know, I like those. I like the normals better. I'm like, you have no idea what you're talking about. You got to see this fucking thing in person.
Yeah,
Bell's lace are crazy looking. There's nothing in the world like this. It's a panda lizard. You know, it's 6 feet long. You know, pink. Some of them are pink. My female is pink and black. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, Bell's beautiful animal. Normal's beautiful as well. I have both types.
Incredible.
They're a lot of fun.
The first one I saw was at Australia Zoo in 2002, I think, and I was like amazed to see one at Australia Zoo. Lace one, I was like, that is one thing we're never ever going to be able to get, and then they started turning up. So yeah, people take it for granted, a lot of this stuff that we've got in the hobby. Is there any other imports you want to share some stories on?
Oh God, I don't know. I've done a lot of dwarf monitor imports out of Europe, but not recently. But you know, like within the last 5 to 10 years, I was importing a lot of captive bred dwarfs. And it's great, you know, because you unpack them and they're just ready to go. Whereas when I import out of Indonesia, it's like, oh, I didn't know this animal didn't have a tail, you know. I didn't know this animal that had a missing eyeball. How did that happen? You know. Like,
that doesn't look like the photo.
And you unpack this water monitor, it's like covered in ticks. I was like, how the hell did this animal get so many ticks on it? And then you set it up, and you're like, all right, I'm gonna eventually pull these ticks off. So you set it up. And you know you've got the hot basking air, you know, hot basking lamps, and you watch the ticks release and start walking off the lizard because it's so hot. And I was like, oh, I guess I don't have to pluck ticks off the lizard, you know. They just give them high basking.
The big lizards over the big monitors we got over here are just a magnet for ticks. Like once a month, we have to go and get them and grab them and pick them all off. And then it's literally a monthly thing now. It's a monthly cycle. They just build up. I'm just glad they don't seem that attracted to humans. I thought I might have had one on me by now, but they seem to be really specific for lizards at least. But yeah, they're a pain. You feel sorry for them when they start building up on the adults. You're like, oh, I need to get these off. But it's you're not going to get that with the Australian stuff out of Europe.
No, there's no ticks. It's great, you know. They usually have their 2 eyeballs and the full tail.
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah. You never know what you're gonna get. You know, I've imported out of Indonesia. I've imported out of West Africa, Madagascar, and I don't do it as much as I used to. But some animals come in and you're like, wow, how'd they even put this in a bag and send it to me? It's like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, yes, it's a worry. And then you might not even get stuff, like we were saying a bit off air, of you can send money to these countries and just turn up with absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
Buy money.
It happened a few times. It happened in Africa. I sent money over for stuff and never got any animals. Happened in Indonesia recently. I told you about that. It was a big chunk of money.
Yeah.
Those animals. And then when we get the police involved, the police recoup some of the money and then they keep it. So I still never got the money back. The cops kept it. Something
I said that's about the most Indonesian thing I've heard all day was when you said that. I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what would happen. Yeah, go to all the work of recouping money, and then the Indonesian.
They arrested the guy. They arrested the guy, and they released him obviously because he's still scamming people.
Yeah. Gotta be careful. Gotta be very, very careful, people. Going back to the Australian stuff, mate, the Ackies you're producing and have produced are just the best Ackies I've seen, even anywhere, actually. I don't think I've seen any.
I didn't do anything crazy. I just bred the best looking red Ackies together until I made better looking red Ackies, and I just ran with it. Right now, I like my Ackies. I like the way they look. This is what I wanted as far as my red Ackies go. Like a nice red base with these big rings and, white center, really pretty. Very striking looking, whereas some guys are just putting out like red and yellow crosses and they're calling them reds and they're getting high prices, and I'm like, man, just I just don't agree with it.
Yeah. Did you have to import your stock from Europe to get it pure again? Because I'm guessing a lot of that red and yellow stuff
we had a lot of the stock in the States already, but I've imported out of Germany nice looking reds.
Yeah,
but my reds have a little bit of German in them, but it's mostly American lineage red Ackies.
Someone managed to keep them pure. Yeah,
keep them pure, and keep them. If you kept them pure, they tend to be red. Whereas a lot of the stuff that you see like on MORPH market that are not red based animals, they're kind of brown and not very bright colored. It's probably a crossed Ackie.
Crossing the two. I used to find the reds had a bit more yellow flecking on the front forearms as well, the true reds.
Yeah. That's what mine have.
I struggled with mine. I had a big group back in England, and compared to like normal, like top end Ackies, they seemed a bit more difficult. Have you found that with the reds?
No. I find them, pretty easy, straightforward. Nice. And the top enders came from American lineages as well, and I just kept line breeding them back to each other, and adding another line in until I got what I wanted. And I just kept on with the project, and now we got these, really interesting looking squiggly dorsal lines and stuff, and they're like a rose gold color. They're a little different, so they're pretty. They're not a yellow Ackie, and it's not a red Ackie. It's like if you go like if you go on like iNaturalist and you look at like Northern Territory, and then you like search like the Ackies that are on like the Catherine River area of Northern Territory, they look a lot like what I'm breeding at home as far as where the top ender is. Yeah. So I managed to like keep breeding like looking animals together to get this look, so yeah, I like them. They're really pretty. One of my favorite dwarf monitors are these little top enders. They don't seem to be getting as big as the red Ackies either. They're like, top out 18 inches, and the reds are bigger. But they lay the same amount of eggs.
Yeah,
they got a good.
Sorry, John. If anyone hasn't seen, check out John's Instagram for just like I said, just those top end ones with the stripes. You got some with almost full stripes going down the back now. Are pretty incredible.
Yeah, the idea was to get them striped all the way down and then make them wider. Get that stripe to widen across the whole back. And it's just, I'm just playing a game of genetics to just, do that. Just picking like animals to breed together. And every time I hatch them, something new pops up that rivals or is better than the previous clutch. So it's fun because they turn around quick. They grow up fast. They lay eggs fast. The eggs hatch pretty quickly as far as monitors go. So it's a fun project, you get fast results. Oh
yeah, definitely. Don't take 9 months or 8 months to hatch either, like some of these bigger monitors. That's the killer with the bigger ones. I'm finding it's like, oh my god, put these in the incubator and forget about them for sure.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? That's what I was going to say then.
How many people are on this thing? I can't see how many people are watching. I bet
it's ranged between 20 and around 16 at the moment.
Oh,
so
okay,
a fair few.
Cool.
What was I going to say?
Hi, everybody. I'm drinking a Chinese Coke Zero.
Looks interesting. That was what I was going to say. Sorry, we said about it offline. So there's a lot of well, we haven't seen a lot of line breeding like you have been doing with the Izakis. Do you think that's something that's going to be more important pushing through with the monitor species? Do you think there's a lot of work to be done just doing the line breeding of stuff?
I mean, if people just focused on one locality and line bred them, they could probably have, you know, good project, you know?
Yeah.
Line breed your, you know, some Bowers, or line breed your Celebensis. I know Rob Fox is doing it, and his look great.
Excellent. What's one project you'd like to see someone work on line breeding? What do you think has got like a lot of potential? Not just water monitors, anything.
Oh, good question. I don't know.
Rock monitors. I don't know if anyone's bothered line breeding them to get more reds and stuff out of them. Some of them can be pretty incredible.
Yeah,
that'd be a good one. And like I said, quick and easy.
Yeah. I don't know. I would like to see somebody in the United States hatch Similis.
Yeah. Don't start on that. We'll get that will get Mike's juices flowing. I think he did say something in the comments earlier.
And I would like to see more people work with you know, the more commonly imported stuff like Rudicolus, or, you know, Dumerils, or even Spinulosus, which is a really bizarre monitor lizard.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Really a weird lizard, Spinulosus. You know,
have you worked with those?
I had, but I had very crappy imports, and they didn't last very long, and I just never got them again.
Right.
So I'll have to wait until I find some nice babies to raise up. But I got imported adults, and they were a mess. I actually, you know, kind of like thought I'd never see them again after I imported them, and then all of a sudden somebody found a way to get them out of the Solomon Islands, and they started coming in.
Yeah, strange. Not many come into Europe.
Right down.
Seems to be quite a few going into the States that I've seen.
Yeah,
but yeah, they're a weird one. I don't know if they always look a bit wrinkly and a bit disheveled, but I just don't know if I've seen any good ones yet.
Well, they're a very ancient species from what I'm reading about on them. It's an ancient species. I'm told it's the most basal of all of Varanus. Like, it's that old. It's like, you know, 30 million years old as a species.
Wow.
It's got these big eyes. It's got that spiky skin. When you feel them, they feel like sandpaper. And they're isolated over there on those islands in the Solomon Islands, and they're just totally unrelated to everything in the area. It's their own thing. They're just really weird. I like them.
Definitely. So before I forget, MJ put a heading on this episode of keeping. We didn't go into any keeping of the large monitors. What do you think is the best way of keeping some of these larger monitors? Say, for example.
Well, you got to keep in mind that you got to keep in mind that it's a big lizard, and it's going to need a lot of floor space. You're going to need a lot of water. Plumbing your cage would be a good idea. You know, change that water out fast. I don't know. That's what I'm doing. You know, I finally managed to plumb some of these water monitor cages, so I don't have to carry buckets of dirty water anymore. That was nice.
Or siphon it out. These alligators home, and every few days I have to siphon the water out. It's like, oh, anything with water after that, I was like, I'm done. It's just too much. But yeah, if a nice little bulkhead on there just to drain it out would be perfect.
Yeah, drain it, hose it out, fill it up. They're gonna go right in and shit in it again. So as soon as you're done filling it up, they turn around, lift their tail, and.
What are you doing for heating and lighting?
I'm using incandescent bulbs, and then for bright lighting, I'm using just full spectrum light bulbs. Not necessarily UVB, but just full spectrum. It's like plant grow tubes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. I'm actually a little bit afraid of UVB bulbs.
Okay.
I just you know, there's been some things I've seen that I was like a little nervous about. You know, like eye issues. You know, I think
Yeah.
too much UVB can burn their cornea. And
Yeah, it's
personally, I don't think they need it to breed. Like people have been breeding monitors for 40 years without it, so I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah.
The animals still live a long life. I think more
I
people went into this, oh, everything needs UVB, UVB. Yeah, but you forgot to give your animal the proper basking temperature. Now it has, gout. So you should have paid more attention to what the animal actually needs, to digest food, like high basking temperature.
And what sort of temperatures are you using for your water monitors?
For the waters, they get up to like 130 Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in Celsius.
Oh, don't worry.
Yeah, it's like between 125 and 130. My cages are basking area.
Yeah.
The rest of the cages.
Do you use multiple spots, or is it just a single spot?
It's usually like a few light bulbs, either two. It depends. Like I often have like 2 sets of flood lamps, so it's like 4 sockets. But often I just need 2 to get what I need out of But if it gets if I run out of a certain wattage bulb, I can always throw in a 3rd light bulb.
Yeah.
So I'm doing incandescent bulbs, and I'm trying to reach about 130. And the rest of the cage can range in the 90s to the 80s. They need a cool area. They definitely use that cool area, especially gravid females. They'll go and hide in like the coolest spot, and you're like, oh my God, what the hell's going on? No, that's, they use that. They need that cool, damp area. They seem to like away from the heat for a little while they're gravid or developing.
Definitely.
So yeah, they need that.
The ambient, sometimes people don't keep warm enough, and that's why they get problems with it. I get people telling me with the tree monitors all the time, oh, you only use 1 bulb, you should be using 2 to get the full spread of the lizards and stuff like that. And I was like, I've never ever had a problem with any burns or anything on any of my tree monitors. Yet some of the people that use 2 or 3 are actually getting the burns that way. Do you think it's important to have a higher sort of ambient temperature sometimes? Obviously you need that cooler area as well, but
and I think a lot of people who are getting burns are using, they're using a bulb that's too far away from the basking area, and then the rest of the cage is too cold, and then the lizard has to over bask and stay under the lamp too freaking long, and then it winds up getting burned, and they don't even realize that they're burning, but they're literally like, slowly cooking, trying to reach an optimal temperature. Whereas they should just, if your ambience were proper, when the animal wakes up and the cage is not like ice cold, the animal's gonna bask for two minutes and then be off and moving, doing whatever it has to do. But if it has to sit there and like reach optimal temperature and sitting there for 15 minutes, you're gonna have problems.
Yeah, I fully agree. I've had a few arguments with a few different people. I was like, my ambience are up. It literally goes and basks for 5 minutes and then it's off. And I never ever burned. So yeah, that's very interesting.
They're not supposed to, like, they don't sit under those lights all day long. You got to just hit it and quit it, basically. They go when they need it and they're gone.
Even in the wild, once it gets up to temperature, I mean, in the morning they might stay out for a little bit longer. But yeah, they don't sit out in it all day long. They just get frazzled. You know what I mean? It's just wake up. They come out, they do a bit of exploring, a bit of hunting, then come back for like 2 minutes. And then off for the the ones I've seen in the wild. Kimberley rock monitors are real famous for it. You sit there, they'll come and bask next to you for a few minutes, go off and hunt, and then back, and they just do that all day. And then it gets too hot, and they just retreat into a crack anyway.
Interesting.
Are you keeping the Adragna? You keep any different? Just a smaller version, obviously less water.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm just I'm using the same configuration, just just smaller.
Nice. What are you using for substrate? You found any substrates that work better?
Well, I kind of switched everything about 5 years ago to like shallow substrate, and I just give them big nesting tubs, and I just spray the cages instead of doing like these giant pits of like 2 feet of dirt. I was like, I don't need all of this dirt, So I could pretty much use any substrate on the floor, like cocoa chips or cypress, and then they always have like this big dirt bin in the cage that they need to go, lay eggs or burrow into. They have that available. But the whole cage is, pretty easy to maintain this way. And I mount my lights lower. They're not on the ceiling with the dwarfs. I keep them kind of low. I mount the floods on the sidewall so that the bulb is only about, 5-6 inches from the ground, and I put like a tile on the ground, and they bask there. And like the same thing with the big monitors, they hit it, they're all, and then they're off. Like they stay on it like 2 minutes and then they move off. That's the idea. And they, then they're off and eating. I usually feed them twice a day.
Excellent. And do you use for your nest boxes? Are you heating them, or is the ambient enough in there?
The ambient's enough. I just keep, having a temperature gun helps, because I could kind of click around and see where's the best spot to put the nest box. But generally speaking, it's in the middle. And if I feel like it's too hot, I just slide it over away from the lights a little. It's like so stupid easy.
Yeah, that seems to be the best way. With a lot of stuff, keep it simple for sure.
Yeah, keep it simple. Make sure your dirt's compressed and nice and tight so they don't get if it's too dry or if it's loose, they get frustrated and they hold on to their eggs too long, and then you have problems. But if it's nice and tight and they can make a burrow and it won't dry out very quickly, that's important. Then they lay their eggs on time, and you get good collection.
I think that's a massive one. I was getting loads of problems with tree monitors holding the eggs, and the eggs come out looking pretty perfect, but they're all sort of think the embryos died inside the mother, and she's just evacuated them. So you get these eggs that look pretty good. They're not infertile, but they've died already before they've come out, and it's from improper nesting, really. Yeah.
Get them out on time, and that's the best you could do.
Yeah.
By the way, definitely. I suck at breeding tree monitors, but I've hatched green trees before, but I'm really struggling as a tree monitor breeder. I could keep them. I'm just not getting the results I want yet. But while I was in China in March, my female Prasinus laid in a nest box that I built, which was actually it's like a double bucket configuration with a heat pad on a thermostat, just because that cage needed some kind of heated area, and I couldn't get my nest box elevated to where I wanted, so I gave it a heated nest box, and it's got like this long cork tube leading into it. So she goes in there, and she did lay eggs in there, but I didn't catch them in time. I didn't realize, I thought she was going to use a different nest box, one that was closer to the lights, and one that I've seen her in and out of before, but she didn't use that. So I'll figure it out eventually. I mean, I like the trees, and I would like to see little babies.
Yeah, not much better than all monitors, but tree monitor, bright whatever color one it is, popping out the egg is pretty incredible. I don't get bored of that at all. But yeah, they're a nightmare for nesting. That seems to be really, really bad. A lot of other monitors, I mean, water monitors. I was saying to Nick on a previous podcast, we got a wild caught one out of the paddy fields that someone just come and bought to us that was gravid. I put it into a temporary cage, and it literally had a nest box. It wasn't a nest box, it was just a load of dirt basically, and there was nothing, like it was dust almost. And she managed to dig down and laid a perfect clutch in there, and we got them incubating now. Like I said, it was just one from a local paddy field, but if you'd done that to a tree monitor, she'd rather have kept hold of them than got rid of them for sure. Right. The trees are weird. I mean, they'll nest for like 4 or 5 times in the same nest box, and you'll think, I've got this cracked, and then the 6th time she'll scatter them or change complete direction on where she wants to go with them. So pain.
And then same thing happened with my McCrae pair. They bred, they get along. I gave her two nesting options, and then this cage that they in has actually a mound of dirt and leaves. And I thought maybe if she skips those two, she'll use the dirt and the leaf mix on the ground, because it was nice and big, like a big mound, and had like wood on top of it, like cork and flats and stuff, and just made it like kind of wild looking. She just dumped out. I was like, son of a...
Yeah, I done exactly the same thing. Filled cages, if she's not going to go in a box, she'll definitely just lay them in the floor of the cage. It's perfect. No, just goes and lays it somewhere completely random in a bit of cork or something. So,
and of course, this cage she dumped in is like a bioactive setup, which I can't stand because the bugs ate the eggs. I was like, if the eggs had a chance, maybe if I found them before the bugs did, they would have had a chance to be incubated. But
Brian was saying that I've never had a problem with I've kept quite a few isopods and stuff and not had a problem with eating eggs, but I think there's a certain type, dwarf white or something. I think he had mullered quite a lot of his eggs early on when he was trying to do that.
My biggest problem at my house is about 20 years ago, I let a whole box of superworms loose, and I can't eradicate them fast enough.
Yeah, I'm
I've
sure
even
they'll eat.
poured boiling water in that cage to kill them all, and they just come right back.
Nice.
You know, I've tried to kill off all the bioactivity on that ground, and I couldn't do it. Boiling pots of water, like I could have, like, you know, scalded myself carrying it down the stairs to dump into a cage, and I can't get rid of these friggin' superworms.
Do you find any of your monitors eat the superworms? Is there any of them?
Very few. I've seen very few of them actually care enough to. Well, the green tree pair, I've seen them eat them. They find them in the cage and they eat them. But for the most part, you know, the lace don't want anything to do with them at this point. The Ackies don't really give a crap unless it's like jumping. Like they like crickets more than superworms. So yeah, I can't get rid of these damn things. And I don't want to do like a full cage, you know, knock down and take out the dirt because it's loaded, and I don't know where to. I don't feel like doing all of that. It's backbreaking. I'll just leave it where it is, and hopefully they don't nest in the ground. You know.
Yeah, for sure. Going back to the your water monitors and stuff, and some of the larger monitors. Obviously, with such a big monitor, what are you doing diet wise for those?
Full size prey like quails for the water monitor. Quails, chicks, occasionally rodents. But I'm doing. I do boiled eggs. Chicken eggs. That's what I'm doing. Sometimes chicken necks. Get those from the butcher. That's a good move. You know, but not as like a it's not like a staple diet, you know, but it certainly helps because quails are not cheap. You know, I'm feeding a bunch of animals, so
just with the bigger stuff, you know, they eat a lot of stuff. I find with the ones at the zoo with the Salvador, obviously, and stuff like that. So it's finding a mix of, you know, if we just fed them rats all the time, then we'd be out of breeder rats to feed them. So trying to find a few different options because they can eat quite a bit.
The price of eggs went up, so I'm like, I don't know, man. Everything's getting expensive. You know, the next thing I'm gonna do is I have to build a chicken coop in the yard. You know, get my own eggs.
Then you're proper farming. Then talking of eggs,
I gotta feed the chickens though. You know, and that's money. This is not, you know, it's like one thing's gonna lead to the other.
It's an onward cycle. So apart from the monitors, you're most famous for the SIM container, and we'll wrap it up on this, I think. Do you want to just explain what a SIM container is, what led you to building it, and what sort of success you've had with it?
Well, you know, I've said on a different podcast, a friend of mine came over one day. It was Christmas night. Greg Madden came over, and he wanted to build a no substrate egg container for his leopard gecko eggs. And the way he was doing it was he took a piece of I had a piece of plastic coated chicken wire, and he cut it with wire snips to get the shape, and he was gonna, you know, make divots basically. And I was like, oh no, why don't we just make it like an accordion shape so the eggs will sit in the valley of the accordion, and then we'll put that in a deep container with wet perlite, you know, and we'll do it that way. And he's like, all right, you know. So he put his leopard gecko eggs in it and took it home, you know. I mean, took it home, then he put his leopard gecko eggs in, obviously. And he incubated them, and it worked, and they hatched. And he goes, bro, they hatched in like 55 days. I was like, that's pretty fast. I was like, let me try this with my Ackies and Tristis monitors. So I did it, and they hatched faster than what I was hatching Tristis and Ackies, you know, in damp perlite. They just hatched like a week faster, almost a week faster. So I was like, this is really cool. Like, and there's nothing out there in the market that looks like this, you know, like let's see if we can actually make this, you know? So, what I did was, I had a prototype made in China during one of my trips, from a drawing. I gave the mold shop a drawing. I was like, can you make this? And, you know, I spent some money to get the sample made, and I tested the sample, and it worked. And I said, dude, this is great. Like, we can maybe market this thing. People might be interested in buying something like this. And that's what we did. So I opened the molds. I got a patent attorney and got it patent pending, which eventually led to a full patent protection, utility patent, and started to produce them in China. in 2009, 10, 11, 12. Those years. It was made in China. And then I moved the molds to the United States, and it's been made here and in a couple of different mold shops since then.
That was a good move.
So it's American made now.
Everything going on.
Yeah, so it's right now it's produced in Michigan at a mold shop. They do a great job, and it really caught on. Like, it took a little while in the beginning. Nobody knew what it was. Even to this day, like new people in the reptile hobby don't know what it is, and then they see it at a reptile show, and they ask me if they could put their spiders in it, and I'm like, you could do whatever you want with it. I got people buy it, and they turn it into a humidor for the cigars.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a pretty versatile little leg box, you know. But for what it's designed for, it works great. You know, hatches reptile eggs fairly easily. You don't have to weigh your. Used to be a time where you had to weigh your water and weigh your perlite, or weigh your vermiculite. This, you could just put a ½ inch of water on the bottom, and lay your eggs in between the rails on the sim container.
Yeah,
put the lid on and put it in the incubator. Yeah,
there's no easy way. I was about to say, I don't know if it's your tagline or whatever it is, John, but there's not an easier way than incubating eggs than a sim container. For pythons, I found it absolutely incredible. It hatched out so many species of pythons. I used to mess up putting in perlite. I'm just old school, so I used to use your boxes from the pythons and put my perlite in there because they're just brilliant tubs. Like, I didn't have to put any ventilation or anything in there. They were just perfect in the UK. But I didn't do it the Sims method. But that's just me being old school and wanting to put monitor eggs in perlite. But for pythons, it was incredible. I mean, I couldn't hatch them in perlite. Put them in a Sims container. And they all start hatching out. And like I said, it's super easy. Has there been any different iterations? You got anything you might change in the future?
No, I'm probably not going to change the molds, but I do have one of my friends who's a tree monitor breeder named Cody Kopp. You might have heard of him.
Yeah.
He's an amazing tree monitor breeder too. He is 3D printing my dividers. So I got this 3D printed wall that pops in to it goes right into the grid, and it goes straight up the walls to the ceiling, and you could separate the sim into 2 compartments. So now if something's hatching, you could put it on one side of the wall so it doesn't disturb the rest of the eggs. Or you could put 2 clutches next to each other, and incubate them at the same time simultaneously. And it works really good.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm doing that. And the only thing that really changes is people come up with interesting ways to, incubate eggs. So I people started using water jelly.
Yeah.
So I started using water jelly as well. Now I just do straight water because water jelly, it's only good for one use, and then the slime gets in there and it's all shit. So I'd rather just do water. It's easy to clean.
I found the aquarium the aquarium fluffy stuff that you put in a filter. Aquarium filter sponge, basically. I used to put that just so the water didn't splash around. So I found if you just put water in there, the water splashes around a bit. But you can put anything in the bottom. You can drench it in perlite and do that, and it'll still work. They're so
I've done
easy.
I've used chopped up sponges on the bottom. I've done that porous rock. I forgot what it's called. It's like
it's like that clay rock stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. Clay balls. I put those in there. I've used that. Yeah. But now I just use water. It's just so much easier to just take it, dump it out, clean it quick, put another layer of water in there and set it up and put it back in the incubator, wait for the next clutch of eggs to be dug up, and then I'll use the container again. So that's what I've been doing, just trying to make it quicker and easier for myself.
Perfect. Where can people buy them if they do want them?
Simcontainer.com. Simcontainer.com. I have them online. I have the XLs in stock, and then the smalls I'll have. I think middle of next week, I can start sending people small sims because they've been out of stock for a while. And
what's going on with the lids on them now, John? That's one thing I did notice. Is the small ones always had the flexible lids, or have you got solid on them? Okay.
Yeah, the small ones have the flexible lid. And those lids they have a lifespan. So I finally got off my ass and placed an order for a whole bunch of replacement lids. So now if anybody needs a new lid, I have them online available, pretty cheap price. But the XL is completely polycarbonate with a hard lid. And that thing is like indestructible, built to last. And you know, you'll never have a problem. You could throw it on the floor, it won't break. It's a great product.
That's my favorite. Those XL ones, even for smaller clutches, you get loads more airflow. I mean, fitting them into the incubator can be a bit of a problem if you've got a small incubator. But yeah, I recommend the XL ones.
Yeah,
I prefer those solid lids as well compared to the bendy ones. I don't know why, but they look really smart now. I got the old version back in the UK, which wasn't as clear, but now it's like fully clear. You can see all your eggs in there. Incredible.
Oh yeah. I finally got this mold shop in Michigan to add some water lines to the molds. It's a steel mold to allow it to be injected with polycarbonate instead of polypropylene. So that's why the clarity is much better now, and it's stronger. Like polycarbonate is pretty rigid. So yeah, I'm pretty happy about that because it's such a sexy box.
Oh yeah,
crystal clear. You know, you can see everything going on. That was the whole idea. Like, you know, to be able to see your eggs hatching without, you don't even have to open up the incubator door in some cases. You just see, like, you see a head popping out of the egg, and it's like, holy shit, it's great.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Yeah. So Simultaneous.
Well, thank you very much for coming on, John. I'm going to leave you with a couple of questions that I didn't give you a heads up on. What's one bit of advice you'd give to someone that's wanting to get into monitors?
Oh, get set up first. Make sure you talk to the right people. Talk to people who actually breed monitors, and get a whole lot of information from them first before you buy it. Build the cage, and then get your lizard. You know, I'm not going to tell you not to get a water monitor as your first pet, because that is totally against what I did. So, you know, my first, like I said, my first water was 5 feet long. So yeah, you know, just get set up first so you don't hurt the animal or, you know, have a bad experience. You want to have a great experience, get set up first.
Definitely.
And find out how to set it up.
That was the easy one. What bit of advice would you give to someone that's a seasoned monitor keeper?
Oh God. Oh man. What can I tell you? Let's see. I would say oh my God, that's a tough one. I don't know. What do you say to them? I'm trying to think what I would say to some of my friends that have been keeping for
maybe money's not the most important thing. Remember why you got into it, or maybe the MORPH thing might not be the right thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, I don't want to change anybody's opinion of what they're working with either.
No.
I don't know. That's a good question. You know, I might have to come on a second podcast and give you the answer to that. I don't know.
Okay. I'll let you do a politician move and swerve the question. That's fine. That's what I do on every podcast when it's a different.
I wasn't expecting that one just.
It just popped into my head. Usually I go for just the what would you give for a new peeper, and I thought I know one I would struggle to answer, and that would be someone that's already doing it. So yeah, maybe post it on your Facebook or something like that when you've had to think about it. But no, we'll definitely get you on for round 2 anyway. It's been amazing.
It's 12:40 in the morning here in China.
Yeah.
And my brain is fried, and I can't freaking think straight. Like I can do water monitor stuff, no problem. But if
it's all that geography lesson you gave to them at the start, right? We're going to wrap it out because it's getting late here. Thank you very much for tuning in, everyone. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Me and John have had a little bit of a delay, and then I had some crazy stuff going on at the start. So thanks for persevering. I won't be on the show or having a show for the next few weeks because I'm off traveling myself. But yeah, thank you very much, John, for coming on the show, mate, and thanks to everyone for tuning in. We'll see you all guys soon.
Thanks for having me. Bye guys. Thank you.